It's a pretty straightforward bill. My math is failing me. I think that we should be reasonably close to a restoration of a quorum, and if that's the case, I would yield for questions. If there are no questions, I would yield the well.
There are no questions, Senator. Correction, there is a question. The senator from the 25th District is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I certainly yield.
We don't want to bring in any ex officios for this vote right now.
Senator, I would welcome any number of the 56 members of this body in any capacity they choose to be here. Just want to make sure we see 29 when we're done.
Thank you.
Are there any questions relevant to the legislation pending before the General Assembly? There are no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well. Ask your favorable consideration.
Question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing no objection, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears no objection and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? The chair hears no objections and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the ayes are 47, the noes are 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The secretary will read House Bill 943.
House Bill 943, Representative Rogers, the 29th, and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 13 of the OCGA relating to legal and void contracts generally, so as to provide for additional limitations on indemnification and duty to defend clauses which are void and unenforceable in contracts for engineering or architectural services, to provide for exceptions, to provide for related matters, repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Committee of the Senate on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Bill be submitted by Senator Bethel, the 54th. Mr. President, the Insurance and Labor Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 943. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 13 of the OCGA relating to legal and void contracts generally, so as to provide for additional limitations on indemnification and duty to defend clauses which are void and unenforceable in contracts for engineering or architectural services, to provide for related matters, to provide for exceptions, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 54th District, the distinguished chairman of the Senate Insurance and Labor Committee, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I bring before you House Bill 943. This is legislation that basically declares, contrary to public policy, contracts which would require professionals in the design and engineering field to serve as indemnitor for an entire project. So that you wouldn't be able to enforce, particularly a small business owner, to say, if you design it, you are going to indemnify me who construct it against all harm in the project. Instead, public policy of the state would require apportionment of responsibility or liability. It has been adopted in 44, similar language has been adopted in 44 different states. This is a committee substitute. You will see that the substitute looks different than the as passed. I will represent to the Senate that the substitute is exactly the version that unanimously passed out of the House committee and does substantively what they were trying to do with an amendment on the floor or in Senate or in House rules. I guess I'm not sure where the amendment language originated, but the ultimate result of what passed the House created more problems than solutions for organizations like GDOT and others, because the nature of the liability and the insurance associated with it, it needed to be in a separate paragraph, which is why you see it in subparagraph C on page 2. Mr. President, I would yield for questions. If there are no questions, I would yield to Will.
There are questions, Senator. The senator from the 56th District is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I certainly yield to my friend.
Thank you, Senator. You mentioned the Georgia Department of Transportation and what you needed to do to perfect this bill. Could you give us a little more commentary to the Senate?
I will do what I can. Senator, if you will look on the as passed the House version, HB 943 FA, floor amendment, I think is the notation there, you will see that on the House side, what we now have as our committee substitute or proposed committee substitute is broken out. They tried to compact it all into subparagraph B. The problem, of course, is that the construction, alteration, repair is not the same professional standards as it relates to the engineering, design, architectural use. We have included at the committee level land surveying, which is a comparable professional service associated with development. And so we have restored that. GDOT's interpretation of paragraph B as it passed the House would have created real problems for them in the contracting process. And so they came and said, we really think putting it back to how it was out of committee in the House would be the safer course of action and accomplish the same end.
Thank you, Senator. Will you yield for another question?
I will yield.
Based on the perfection of the Senate of this bill, then, will this ultimately help us to allow the GDOT to get things done quicker and more efficient, thus improving our roadways and the safety for Georgians?
Well, I would hope so, Senator. I don't know that it will result in quicker. I would say certainly more efficient in the sense that small businesses who may be discouraged from entering into professional services, pursuing professional services contracts because of these purported indemnity clause would now be more free to enter, because they would know they're going to be responsible for their part of the project, as is everyone else associated in a joint and several liability sort of scenario.
So if you'll yield for one final question.
I will yield.
Senator, in summary, we're saying this is just good government at work.
I think it is good government. It is, I think, Senator, the policy of the state of Georgia to prohibit, essentially, in lawyer terms, they sort of use contract of adhesion a lot of times, but to prohibit you from absolving yourself of liability by casting it on another professional associated with the project.
The senator from the 7th District, the distinguished chairman of the Senate Public Safety Committee, is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the good senator from Northwest Georgia yield?
I will yield to the distinguished chair of the Public Safety Committee.
That sounded good, didn't it? It really did. Thank you, Senator. I hear you mention small business a couple of times in your remarks, and as a small business owner myself, just want to verify that nothing in this particular legislation has any detrimental impact on small businesses in the state of Georgia, because, Senator, as you know, small businesses are the backbone of this nation and our state, and just want to be reaffirmed and reassured that
Senator,
this does not.
No, and I appreciate your question, Senator, and I appreciate your point of view. I think, on the contrary, the bill itself is a protector of small businesses against what I would consider unethical business practices. Some may not consider them unethical, but it would certainly protect the small business owner from having a larger business partner or part of a project basically overpower you at the expense of getting your business, then putting you in a situation where you would be the only one responsible for the totality of a project. Instead, this makes sure that everybody that participates in this sort of work is accountable for whatever work they did as part of one of these projects.
So if you'll further yield.
I will yield.
The senator would agree that this is a bill that not only is as the senator from the 56 asked, a measure in regards to good government, but also is a bill that's good for business in this state.
It is, Senator, and I think you would find that sentiment echoed by the professionals who would be protected by this language.
Thank you, Senator.
There are no further questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well and ask your favorable consideration.
I stand corrected.
Well, I will stand for more questions.
The senator from the 55th District is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a question. I'd like to excuse the senator from the
Okay.
44th.
I need to get out of
That'll be
the-
in order in a moment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I
No further
yield the
questions?
well and ask your favorable consideration of the bill.
Senator from the 55th District is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 44th.
Is there any objection to the senator's request? Hearing no objection, the request is granted and the senator is excused. Question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing no objection, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears no objection and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? The chair hears no objections and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the ayes are 52, the noes are 0. The bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Secretary will read House Bill 926.
House Bill 926 by Representative Broderick of the 4th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4 of Title 26 of the OCGA relating to pharmacists and pharmacies so as to provide for the regulation of certain facilities and entities involved in the wholesale, manufacture, and distribution of drugs, to provide definitions, provide for licensure and registration, provide for temporary pharmacy licenses for service members, to revise provisions relating to the compounding of drug products to conform with federal law, to establish requirements relating to drug supply chain security, to revise a provision relating to the return of outdated drugs, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Committee of the Senate Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectfully submitted by Senator Unterman of the 45th. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services offers the following substitute to House Bill 926. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4 of Title 26 of the OCGA relating to pharmacists and pharmacies so as to provide for the licensure of outsourcing facilities and third-party logistics providers, to provide for definitions, to provide for temporary pharmacy licenses for service members, to require that compounding of drug products for use in a practitioner's office can only be conducted by outsourcing facilities to conform to federal law, to establish requirements relating to drug supply chain security, provides a provision relating to the return of outdated drugs, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Chair is again privileged to recognize the distinguished senator from the 54th District for the purpose of presenting the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senators. I bring before you House Bill 926. In doing so, I must confess that I am a big fan of the senator from the 1st, but I have probably never more sincerely missed his predecessor than when called upon to present House Bill 926. House Bill 926 is a consumer protection bill. And it essentially, and a public health bill as well, it essentially makes sure that all those individuals and entities that are handling prescription pharmaceuticals from the point of manufacture until it's distributed or dispersed to patients are properly licensed and regulated. In particular, the impact is to what are known as compounding pharmacies, pharmacies that aren't necessarily just sort of generating the pills and tablets that most of us take, but unique compounds, things like chemotherapy, drugs, and related sorts of pharmaceuticals that we get. And so when those drugs come to us through different delivery mechanisms or different channels, in the bill you'll see those are called third-party logistics providers, people who are in the business of getting these prescription drugs from manufacturer all the way down to patient. So when those entities are handling the drugs, the public interest is that they are secure and that they are not going to be tampered with, that they are not going to become adulterated in some way with foreign items or elements. And so the public's interest is there, and that's why the bill says we're going to make sure that we are licensing that process in a responsible fashion so that we don't have gaps. If it was a criminal proceeding, we'd be talking about chain of custody, making sure that we have responsibility at all places along the way. And Mr. President, I would yield for questions on House Bill 926.
There are questions, Senator. The senator from the 56th District is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will my friend and senator yield?
I certainly will yield.
Thank you, Senator. Isn't it true in today's day and age we've got prescription drug abuse going on some of the highest levels? And even though we as a Senate support third-party logistics as a great manner of us to be able to have businesses involved to help out other businesses and to ultimately lower price for consumers, that this is the point of risk, and in order to protect our society, this bill is very important.
I think the senator hits a very important piece of the policy associated with this bill, in that we are focusing our efforts on allowing ingenuity within the marketplace, more expeditious, more efficient delivery of pharmaceuticals, which certainly does lower costs, also speeds the delivery of service in some cases. That's important. It certainly has to be balanced with protecting the public health and making sure that the integrity of those pharmaceuticals is what they ought to be when they reach the patient.
Senator, will you further yield?
I will yield.
Would it be fair to say that we're really leveling the playing field for everyone who will be in that chain of custody, as you mentioned, to make sure that we're all playing by the same rules?
Sir, I think that's a fair assessment of how the bill would operate, so that everybody who's placing hands on, whether they take title to the pharmaceuticals or not in that process, they have that same level of responsibility and stewardship, both to the manufacturer, but more importantly, to the end patient.
And would you yield for one final question, Senator?
I will.
Senator, isn't it true that unfortunately in the past, when certain pharmaceutical drugs have been, whether on purpose or intentionally tampered with, that has put people at risk, and this will ultimately help protect Georgians?
I do think there's a public health and consumer safety aspect of this, and there are examples in our history where pharmaceuticals have been mistreated, and certainly to the detriment of patients, and this is one step in ensuring that that does not happen in Georgia.
There are other questions, Senator. The distinguished senator from the 9th District, Gwinnett County's finest, is recognized for the purpose, second finest, next to the senator from the 45th District.
Certainly within the top 5 or 6.
Senator from the 9th is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. That was, I would yield to yourself as being Gwinnett's finest, though. Will you? I didn't say I was second.
Okay. I yield.
You
I yield,
yield.
Senator.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, let's be clear. This is not a bill that is dealing with single drugs and pharmaceuticals. These are drugs that have been compounded.
Generally, that's where we're going to see this application is in what's called a compounding pharmacy. They are generally specialty pharmacies. They're located throughout the state, but they're going to be engaged in the production of chemotherapy drugs and related compounds that are unique. They're often very patient-specific, as opposed to a 250 milligram of this drug or that drug that comes in a tablet form.
So this will, because of the sensitivity of these drugs and the people they serve, this is very important that we do not decrease the safety of these pharmaceuticals. They must be taking extra precaution to make sure they're safe. Is that
Senator,
correct?
you're exactly right. And really, to that point, I'm not even entirely sure that it's extra precaution. We just got to make sure that the proper precaution is being taken throughout. And because the market is moving and the market is shifting in terms of how things are being delivered by third-party logistics providers, we need to make sure that our regulatory scheme that protects the patient is consistent with moves within the market.
Thank you. The least of the Gwinnett delegation will now sit down.
The senator from the 45th District, Gwinnett County's finest, is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Will the chairman yield?
I will yield to the Chair of Health and Human Services, and in doing so, thank her for her work on this and related issues for many years now.
Thank you, Senator. Is it not true, Senator, that we have in the state of Georgia several large logistical home-based companies like UPS and Cardinal Healthcare and several other McKesson logistical companies?
That is true, Senator, and we're thankful for that. We're proud to be a hub for logistics and transportation.
Would you further yield?
I yield.
Senator, is it not true that one of the issues in this particular bill was the delivery of chemotherapy, chemo drugs for cancer, and that we wanted to make sure that in-home delivery and also to infusion centers? Can you elaborate on how much we worked on that?
Senator, I would hesitate to quantify how much work the chair put in. I know that the House author, who happens to be my House rep, as well as the chair, and really countless other legislators, but under the leadership of yourself and your counterpart across the way, worked very diligently to ensure that the end product accomplished our purpose. But did so in a way that still respected the market and allowed for these sorts of delivery methods to continue and hopefully flourish.
Would the senator further yield?
I will yield.
Senator, could you kind of explain, we have a lot of new senators in here, the importance of out-of-state versus in-state and the history of how we came about the logistical systems that the infrastructure we have in place. Could you talk just a little bit about how important this is and what it means to those home-based companies?
Well, Senator, I would defer to your knowledge and experience on the totality of that. There is certainly a strong history in Georgia that leads us to the conclusion that protecting and focusing our resources on those home-based and those internally developed assets is in the best interest of Georgia patients, and that which as you know, obviously, but which is what it all comes down to in the end. We want to make sure that Georgia patients receiving health care in any form, but in this case pharmaceuticals, and in particular the chemotherapy type drugs, that they are receiving high quality, accurately made, accurately delivered, and efficacious drugs and therapies, whether it's delivered in an office or a home or an infusion center. We want to make sure that our experience, I think, reinforces that domestic, meaning in-state, as I use it right now, is the best delivery mechanism that we have at our disposal.
Mr. Chairman, could you further yield?
I will certainly yield.
Could you talk just a little bit about how important it is that we're not just talking about logistics, we're talking about the product, and a lot of these products are delivered in insulated cases, and they have to be at a certain temperature, whether it's insulin or these chemotherapy drugs. Can you talk about how these products are delivered?
Well, Senator, to your point, temperature, many drugs that are produced or deliveries that are produced in a compounding pharmacy also are on occasion light sensitive, and so they don't need to be exposed to daylight or even incandescent lights for any extended period of time. So they're in opaque containers, they're in insulated containers. They have a time frame. Obviously, they were shipped at a certain temperature in some instances and need to maintain temperature until they're delivered. So the speed with which they're delivered, making sure that throughout that journey they are maintained at a temperature, because it doesn't do you any good to have it at a temperature when it departs and when it arrives, but have it go out of temperature in between. So the packaging associated with it, the timeline associated with it, and in some cases, I believe that the actual handling in terms of how much it's jostled and moved can impact the final product, but I would not be an expert on that issue.
And would you further yield for one final question?
I yield.
Is it not true that some of these products are live vaccines versus non-live? And can you talk a little bit about how important it is, and also for communicable diseases and fighting epidemics, that logistically that we have to have this down pat to make sure that our citizens get the right product?
Certainly, Senator. If you are transmitting anything that's a live vaccine, or sometimes you hear live attenuated vaccine where it's been weakened but it's still live in that delivery form, or other drugs that, again, would have those same sensitivities if it's not a vaccine. In any of those situations, if you violate the protocol, if you don't deliver it in that form, you risk its value at all. I mean, it may end up in some cases actually causing the patient harm, because if it's not in its appropriate form, if it's not held in temperature, it loses its value, and so then they're getting in some cases, some different compound altogether, because when the temperature changes, it may change its chemical or molecular makeup. And so in those situations, not only would it be that we would be depriving someone of an effective treatment, we may actually be doing them harm. So it is critically important that when those things that require temperature sensitivity, light sensitivity, timeline sensitivity, that we have a mechanism in place that ensures that that's what's actually happening. And that's, I think, at the core and the intent of the legislation before us.
There are additional questions. The great champion of religious freedom, the senator from the 13th District, is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the senator to yield?
Senator, I yield.
Isn't it true that in 2013 in New England we had a compound pharmacy like this, that they sent out drugs all across the country, and it was really an epidemic that took place?
I believe I recall the story that you're referring to.
It was a meningitis outbreak, best I remember. And isn't it true that a yes vote for this bill then would be a vote for public safety for Georgia?
I would say public safety, consumer safety, and overall public health are all implicated by the policy associated with House Bill 926.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you bringing this bill forward, and I look forward to being able to vote yes for this bill.
Thank you, Senator. I look forward to seeing that yes vote.
There are additional questions. The senator from the 11th District, the distinguished doctor from Southwest Georgia, is
Thank you,
recognized.
Mr. President. Will the chairman yield?
I certainly yield to my friend.
Looking at lines 82 through 84, that section of the bill is of particular interest to my fellow physicians who practice oncology and sometimes administer medications that they compound specifically for a patient. And I wanted to make sure that you feel like that language makes sure they're protected in their efforts to control the diseases that they treat.
Senator, I appreciate you bringing those lines to the attention of the body during this debate. I think you raised a very important point, that the bill would not impair or interfere with a physician practice where they are compounding on site for their patients, which is really an important aspect of medical practice. practice in today's world, particularly, as you say, for oncologists, but other practice. I mean, I know a lot of dermatologists have similar functions at their offices, and we certainly want to make sure that we're not, this is only when we're dealing with transport, when we're manufacturing and moving, and we certainly have made sure that they are protected, as you indicated, on lines 82 through 84.
There are no further questions, Senator. There is, however, a late, so you are excused unless you have additional comments
I
to make?
feel like I should at least wait for just a moment, because the senator from the 53rd hadn't asked me about moral turpitude once. And I've been here a little while, but I appreciate him giving me grace. It's been a while since I've had that kind of visit to the well, and I appreciate your attention, and I yield the well.
Mr. Chairman, you have provoked an additional question.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that, because this is a very important bill for us to continue
The
discussing.
distinguished and, as of late yesterday, powerful chairman of the Rules Committee is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Currently, I'm got a lot of fair weather friends after the last Rules meeting. Senator Yield.
I certainly yield.
Senator, I appreciate you inspiring such a question, and want to know about your premise in discussing moral turpitude. Should it be in this bill?
Senator, I think...
Could you tell me why it's not in this bill?
Well, Senator, I think, in fact, this bill acts to eradicate moral turpitude as it relates to the delivery of pharmaceuticals in Georgia. I know your passion for morality. I know your passion for making sure that people do the right thing. And this bill ensures that those people who are delivering pharmaceuticals in and through Georgia will be doing the right thing as it relates to the medication they're handling.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Yield. Isn't it true that I appreciate your passion for delivery of these such drugs to help provide medical help for people all throughout Georgia, and for your delivery in a moral, express, turpitude way?
Senator, I believe that you are exactly right, and you are a champion of health in Georgia, and a beacon to us all about health issues. So I appreciate that.
Senator, there's an additional question. The senator from the 45th District is recognized.
Senator Yield.
I will certainly yield to the chair.
Senator, just one other question. Could you explain what the effect has been when the pharmacy board moved from underneath the Secretary of State's office, and what effect it's had, and their ability to communicate to us what their needs are? Could you talk just a little bit about that?
Senator, I would defer to the chair's experience being the chair of Health and Human Services. I will say that I personally have had mixed reviews from professionals I know in terms of whether there's been a meaningful positive or negative, or any meaningful difference at all. I know that one of your consistent interests is maintaining good lines of communication, good communication with all of our health-related boards. It's my sincere hope that you are seeing a positive trend in that communication, but I would not want to speak for you or on your behalf.
There are no further questions, Senator.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate everyone's attention and ask your favorable consideration of House Bill 926.
There is, however, a late arriving amendment. We will suspend for a moment to allow the printing and distribution of the amendment.
Mr. President, Senator Albers of the 56th and Mullis of the 53rd offer the following amendment number 1 to the Senate substitute to House Bill 926 by line 54 after the word board as appointed by the Georgia Senate. Mr. President, that completes the order.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 56th District, the distinguished chairman of the Senate State and Local Government Operations Committee, for the purpose of speaking to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll speak slow as I know the amendment's still being handed out. We want to make sure that in this bill, I know the senator from the 54th did an extraordinary job. However, we want to make sure that we don't abdicate any authority away from the legislature. And When the senator from the 53rd and I were discussing it, we thought it'd be appropriate to make sure that any boards that are appointed would have some type of oversight and be appointed by our very own Georgia Senate. So with that, just trying to help balance out the powers between the executive, legislative, and judicial branch, I offer amendment number 1 with my colleague from the senator from the 53rd. And I would gladly yield for questions.
You have questions? The senator from the 45th district is recognized.
Senator, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you helping me on all my Buford bills. Thank you very much.
It is my pleasure, Senator.
I'm trying to find where this is in the book. What, line 54?
Yes, if you will go down, actually that's line 154. I probably wrote it just a bit too quickly in my error.
I think you did. You might have to make another amendment.
I may have to redo that amendment, but if you have some questions, we can answer those now while we work on
Okay,
that.
so on line 154,
Yes.
I don't think that's applicable.
Are you looking at the substitute, Senator?
Wait a minute. 154. Yeah, you did make a mistake, I think. So I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, I believe you need to go back and change it to 154. I'll be glad to do that if you want me to.
That'd be great, Senator. I appreciate your help.
There are additional questions. The governor's floor leader, the distinguished senator from the 18th district, is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the senator, could you speak to the germaneness of your amendment as offered, sir?
Well, thank you, Senator, for that question.
Thank you.
Certainly, that is something that I cannot answer. We'd have to ask the president to weigh in on that. Come on.
Okay, your parliamentary inquiry is not in order at this time. Do you have any questions for the senator in the well? The senator from the 54th district is recognized for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, to my friend and Mr. Chairman.
Senator, I appreciate that your great interest in this piece of legislation, and I know your thoroughness before you would bring an amendment that you would fully understand the legislation before us. I would like to make sure that sort of everybody understands the totality of what you might be proposing. If you'll look at line 12, I don't know if you took the committee substitute up with you, but I know a lot of times you want to make sure that we have sort of comprehensive and expanded knowledge. Could you remind the Senate what OCGA or the code section 2645 provides before the provisions that we're adding?
You know, Senator, that is a great question. As the Senate sponsor yourself for that bill, it probably would be more appropriate for you to speak that than me, so I would not want to belabor that. So,
and I apologize for omitting that from my presentation. It seems like maybe all I missed while I was there. I do appreciate your interest in the bill and appreciate your work on this amendment.
Senator, thank you for all your hard work.
The senator from the 9th district, you have a question? No further questions, Senator.
Thank
you. The senator from the 45th district is recognized.
Inquiry?
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I submitted a 1A and we're waiting it to be put on the desk?
There is a late arriving amendment to the amendment. We will suspend for a moment to allow for the printing and distribution of the amendment. The Secretary will read Amendment 1A.
Mr. President, Senator Unterman of the 45th offers the following Amendment 1A to the Senate substitute to House Bill 926 by line 154 after the word board as appointed by the Georgia Senate. Mr. President, that completes the order.
For what purpose does the senator from the 29th district seek recognition?
Mr. President, I move the previous question.
The senator's not recognized for that purpose. The senator from the 45th District, the distinguished chairman of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, is recognized for the purpose of speaking to her Amendment 1A.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of this amendment to the Senate substitute, I think I forgot to write down the bill number, 926, is to correct, I believe, the senator from the 56 put in line 54, and it's supposed to be line 154. Be glad to answer any questions.
There are questions, Senator. The senator from the 56th District is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Isn't it true that I appreciate your assistance with updating this very small clerical error?
Yes.
And isn't it true that I believe that you are by far the best of all the Gwinnett County senators?
Well, thank you very much. I think there might be the senator from the 9th and the 48th and senator back there from South Gwinnett County. I think she might have something to say about that.
Thank you,
and
Senator.
the Peachtree Corner senator. I think we actually have 7 members in our Gwinnett County delegation. We have a great delegation here in the Georgia State Senate, and I appreciate working with them.
There are no further questions.
Thank you. I
Senator.
yield the well.
The senator from the 54th District, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. At the appropriate time and the conclusion of all debate, I would like to request a ruling on germaneness on Amendment 1 and request permission to approach for purposes of discussion if necessary.
If the senator from the 54th District will approach, and if the Senate Majority Whip will approach, we'll suspend for a moment. In light of expected developments, the chair will suspend a ruling on germaneness. The senator from the 56th district is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. In light of recent discussions, I'd like to withdraw with unanimous consent amendment number 1.
Senator from the 56th district has asked unanimous consent to withdraw amendment number 1. Is there objection to his? The senator from the 9th district has objected. We'll suspend for just one moment. The senator from the 25th district is recognized.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
I would like for you to cite the code section in which y'all determined the non-germaneness of that last amendment.
The chair did not make a ruling on germaneness due to the senator's unanimous request that the amendment be withdrawn. So there never was a germaneness ruling.
I apologize, Mr. President.
Certainly. The senator from the 56th district has moved to withdraw the motion. The senator from the 9th district has objected. All those in favor of the motion to withdraw the amendment shall rise, stand, and be counted. Reverse. What's our next step? There was no quorum voting. Instructed the secretary to ring the bell to signal to the senators they need to return to the chamber to vote. Question again is on the adoption of the motion by the senator from the 56th district to withdraw the amendment. All those in favor signify so by rising, standing, and being counted. Reverse. The ayes are 28, the noes are 6. The motion is adopted. Amendment number 1 is withdrawn. Amendment number 1A is mooted by the withdrawal of Amendment 1. The question now is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing no objection, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears no objection. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? Chair hears no objection, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the ayes are 53, the noes are 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The chair will again suspend our proceedings. We will stand at ease until 5:45 p.m. The chair would like to draw to the attention of the members of the body that the conference committee report to the budget was placed on your desks at 4:03 p.m. Under the rules of the Senate, the conference committee report must lay there for 2 hours until before it may be voted on. The chair urges the members of the body to take the time afforded by this recess to study the budget so they can make an informed decision on the conference committee report.